When I was 16, I made a silent promise to myself. I would never rely on anyone to save me. Not my parents, not my teachers, not some magical opportunity that might fall into my lap. Just me. That promise shaped every decision I made after that, even if no one around me noticed or cared at the time. Especially not my parents. If you asked them back then, I was just the quiet one. The kid who always had his head buried in a laptop. The one who didn't understand how the world works. Meanwhile, my older brother, Aaron, walked around like he was born wearing a crown. Every birthday felt like his coronation. Every dinner was a performance of his supposed brilliance. And my parents? They clapped the loudest. My name's Carl. I'm 24 now. But this story starts a few years back, when I was just turning 21. By then, I had already paid off my student loans. Yes, all of them. I had bought my first home in cash, nothing flashy, just a small place in the suburbs. And I had grown my e-commerce business into something I could be proud of. 6 figures in revenue, a few freelancers under me, and the kind of freedom that most people my age only dreamed about. I wasn't flashy. I didn't post about it. I just kept my head down and worked. Because I knew, deep down, that if I ever stopped to celebrate, someone would try to take it from me. Turns out, I was right. Growing up in a small town, everyone knew everyone's business, especially when you had a last name like ours. My dad, Martin, was a regional manager for a construction supply company. He wore his title like a badge of honor. My mom, Cheryl, floated between part-time jobs and being a full-time supporter of Aaron's ambitions. Aaron, 2 years older than me, had always been the golden child. My parents used to joke that Aaron came out of the womb with a winning smile and a scholarship offer. It didn't matter that he failed classes, wrecked 2 cars, or once maxed out my dad's credit card on a spring break trip he wasn't even supposed to be on. Every time, my parents found a way to brush it off. He's just finding himself, they'd say. He's meant for great things. And me? I was the backup plan, the invisible sibling. I still remember one Thanksgiving dinner, not long before all hell broke loose. We were sitting at my parents' house, turkey half-carved, my mom already a glass and a half into her boxed wine. Aaron had just come back from trying out a startup idea in LA that ended, predictably, with him crashing on someone's couch and begging to come home. My parents welcomed him back like a war hero. At dinner, my dad raised a glass. "To new beginnings," he said, looking directly at Aaron. "We know your next chapter is going to be a big one." Aaron smirked and clinked his glass. I said nothing. No one toasted me when I bought my house. No one even mentioned it. They all knew. I told them months earlier. Sent photos. Offered to host them. I never got a response. But Aaron moves back in with 2 duffel bags and debt collectors on his tail, and suddenly, he's the phoenix rising from the ashes. I try not to let it get to me. I really did. I'd spent years building my business, learning SEO, product sourcing, customer service. Every late night, every missed party, every little win I quietly celebrated alone in my apartment. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would finally be enough to earn a little respect. But I should have known better. In our house, effort didn't matter. Results didn't matter. What mattered was image, charm, drama. And Aaron had all of that in spades. A week after that Thanksgiving, my mom called me. Her tone was weird, tight, rehearsed. She asked if I could come over to talk. I assumed it had something to do with Aaron. Maybe they wanted me to help him find a job or pretend to be a reference. I was used to being the quiet fixer, the ghost behind the curtain. But when I showed up, I knew something was off. My dad was sitting in his recliner, arms crossed, TV muted. Aaron was on the couch, wearing sweatpants and looking smug, like he was in on some inside joke. My mom had that nervous smile she always used when she was about to say something she knew was going to upset me. She gestured to the kitchen table. "Why don't we sit down?" I remember how slow I moved, how the air felt heavy, like something was about to shift. I sat. My mom took a breath. Then she said it. "We were hoping you could help Aaron with a little investment." That word hung in the air like a bad smell. Investment. As if I was some angel investor they could charm into saving their sinking ship. I blinked. "What kind of investment?" Aaron leaned forward. "I've got this idea. It's like a subscription box service, but for tech gadgets. You know, like those mystery boxes. We could market it to college kids. Low overhead, high margins." I looked at him, then at my parents. "And you want me to fund it?" My dad cleared his throat. "Not fund exactly. Just help him get started. You've had a good run, Carl. You've done well for yourself. It's time to pay it forward. Pay it forward. Like I had been handed something for free. Like my 3 a.m. customer emails, my 14-hour workdays, my ramen-fueled grind through college meant nothing because I hadn't done it the right way. I'm sorry, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. But I'm not in a position to just throw money at a vague idea with no business plan. Aaron rolled his eyes. It's not vague. I've got contacts. I know people. You've been back here for 2 weeks, I said, living in the guest room. That was a mistake. I saw the way my mom's face hardened, the way my dad leaned forward. My mom set her hand on the table. Carl, we're just asking you to help your brother. Family supports each other. I've supported myself since I was 18, I said, standing up. That's how I was taught, right? They didn't answer. And I left. I thought that would be the end of it. I figured they'd guilt trip me, maybe send a few passive-aggressive texts, and then move on. That's how it had always gone. But I didn't know how desperate things were about to get. I didn't know just how far my parents were willing to go to protect their golden boy. Because the next time I saw them was in court. But that's jumping ahead. There's more to tell, so much more. The silent war that started with a favor and turned into a full-blown legal ambush. The betrayal, the lies. The moment I realized my own parents were willing to destroy me, just to prop up the son who had never lifted a finger. And how I decided, finally, to stop turning the other cheek. They didn't knock. It was a Wednesday night, and I remember that clearly because it was inventory night. The least glamorous part of my business, but the most essential. Every week, I'd haul boxes out of the storage room, scan and repackage products, prep orders for my fulfillment partners. That night, I was ankle-deep in shipping labels when I heard the sound of my front door opening. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I lived alone. No one had a spare key. Then I heard the unmistakable click of the deadbolt sliding shut again, and the low murmur of voices, 3, maybe 4. And one of them was Aaron. I came around the corner fast, heart pounding. What the? My parents were in my entryway. Aaron was behind them, smirking like he owned the place. And my dad? He had a manila folder under his arm, and that self-righteous look he used to wear whenever he lectured me about attitude as a kid. My mom gave me a tight-lipped smile like this was a casual family visit, not a break-in. How did you get in? I asked, stunned. We used the key, my mom said. Like it was nothing. Like the emergency spare I'd once given them years ago, back when I still thought we had something resembling a healthy relationship, was an open invitation to waltz in unannounced. I held out my hand. Give it back. Now. She hesitated, then fished it from her purse and dropped it into my palm like a child caught stealing. But it wasn't just that. It was the look in her eyes. She wasn't embarrassed. She was disappointed. At me. What are you doing here? I asked, more tired than angry. Aaron shrugged, stepping into the living room like he owned it. We tried being polite. You slammed the door in our faces. So now we're handling things the proper way. The proper way? I echoed, narrowing my eyes. My dad laid the folder on my kitchen island and slid it across. It's time we had a serious talk, Carl. About what you owe this family. I didn't open the folder. Not yet. I was too busy trying to figure out if I was dreaming. You're in my house. Without permission. You have 5 seconds to explain why I shouldn't call the cops. Oh, please, my mom said, like I was being dramatic. You're acting like a stranger. I wonder why, I shot back. Just read the paperwork, my dad said, nodding at the folder. I flipped it open. At first, it didn't register. Legal language. Names. Numbers. A claim filed in their names against me. Then the words hit me like a slap. Fraudulent withholding of assets. Misappropriation of family investment. Unjust enrichment at the expense of sibling. I stared at the page. What the hell is this? My voice cracked, sharp and loud in the stillness of my home. Aaron stepped up, arms crossed. It's what you get when you lie about where the money came from. I didn't lie about anything. Oh, come on, he said, rolling his eyes. We all know you didn't build this business from scratch. You used the money Grandpa left, didn't you? My jaw dropped. Are you serious right now? He grinned like a cat who had just cornered a mouse. You think I didn't notice how you suddenly got real cozy with e-commerce the year Grandpa died? That's when your little side hustle blew up. Admit it. I didn't get a cent from Grandpa's estate, I said, stunned. He left everything to Grandma. She made that clear. Yeah, and she always had a soft spot for you, my mom said quietly. even when Aaron was the one who needed help. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You break into my house, throw false accusations at me, and what? You want me to admit to stealing money I never touched? We want what's fair, my dad said firmly. Aaron has been struggling. You've clearly been profiting. It's time to rebalance the scales. There it was. The mask was off. I had expected manipulation, maybe guilt trips. But this? A lawsuit? Against their own son? Something in me cracked. Years of being overlooked, talked down to, treated like a background character in Aaron's story, all of it boiled over at once. You want to rebalance the scales? I said, voice shaking. Let's talk about scales. Let's talk about the 2 cars you bought him before he was even 20. The way you co-signed his loans, paid off his credit cards, and let him move back in every time he failed. You've given him everything. And me? I've never asked you for a single cent. Because you were always too proud, my mom snapped. Because I had to be. I shouted. You never offered. You never believed in me. You never even asked what I was building. And now that it worked, you think I owe you? There was silence for a beat. Then Aaron muttered. You wouldn't even have a future if it weren't for this family. My fists clenched. You mean the family that's suing me? My dad took a step forward. You can avoid all of this. If you just help your brother get on his feet, we can drop the claim. Clean slate. You mean hand over my money so you don't drag my name through the mud? He didn't answer. I picked up the folder and tossed it back. Get out. Now. My mom looked like she wanted to argue. My dad looked like he wanted to punch a wall. Aaron didn't say a word, just turned and walked out with that smug swagger that said he thought he'd won. But they hadn't won. They'd lit the fuse. Over the next few days, the fallout started trickling in. A letter from their lawyer arrived first, confirming they were going forward with the claim. Then came the calls from extended family, uncles, cousins, even old neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly wanting to check in after hearing some things. The rumor mill was spinning fast, and all of it painted me as the villain. I tried to stay focused. My business was still running, orders still flowing. But I couldn't ignore the way everything felt, poisoned. Every email notification felt like it might be a subpoena. Every family text felt like a trap. I stopped sleeping. I started checking my front door 3 times a night. And then, 3 weeks after the break-in, I got the email that made everything real. It was from my bank. One of my business accounts, frozen. Pending investigation tied to a legal dispute. My heart stopped. I clicked through, fingers trembling. I'd done nothing wrong. Paid all my taxes. Kept clean records. But now, thanks to their baseless claims, I was being treated like a criminal. I called the bank. They were polite, but firm. The freeze would stay in place until the claim was resolved in court. Aaron had said he'd make things fair. He was dragging me into the mud, and my parents were handing him the rope. I thought that would be the worst of it. But then I found out something that made my blood run cold. Aaron hadn't just filed a lawsuit. He'd filed a restraining order. Against me, claiming I'd threatened him. Claimed I was erratic, hostile, and a danger to his safety. I stared at the copy in disbelief. The timing wasn't a coincidence. He was trying to portray me as unstable, so the court would believe his story, not mine. It was character assassination, plain and simple. A smear campaign built on lies and funded by the same people who used to tuck me in at night. That was the breaking point. It wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't even about the lawsuit. It was about principle. About standing up to people who had used love as a leash and expected me to roll over and thank them for it. I wasn't going to settle. I wasn't going to apologize. And I wasn't going to let them rewrite the story of my life. They wanted a war. Fine. I'd give them one. And the first shot would be fired at the one secret they thought I didn't know, the financial skeleton in their closet. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for a Monday morning in early spring. The sun was out, but I barely noticed. I hadn't slept the night before. Too wired, too angry, too focused on every worst-case scenario running on a loop in my head. My lawyer, a guy named Miles who I found through a friend of a friend, assured me the case was weak. This isn't going anywhere, he'd said. Judges can smell fabricated drama a mile away. Still, I was shaking when I walked into the courthouse. I wasn't scared of losing the restraining order case. I was scared of what it meant, that Aaron was willing to go this far. That my parents were willing to swear under oath that I was violent, unstable, and a danger to my own brother. That they were coaching him on what to say. I knew it in my gut. Their names weren't on the document, but their fingerprints were all over it. That morning, they all showed up. Aaron walked in wearing a blazer that didn't fit, acting like he was the victim of some mafia vendetta. My parents sat behind him like his personal support team, Mom dabbing fake tears, Dad scowling at me like I'd ruined the family name. When the judge threw out the case 20 minutes in, citing insufficient evidence and clear motive of financial retaliation, they acted shocked. Aaron even tried to speak again after the gavel dropped, like he thought he could convince the judge to change his mind. But it was over. For that part, anyway. I didn't feel relief. I felt empty. Because even though I'd technically won, I knew this wasn't over. The restraining order wasn't the real attack. It was just a distraction. A character hit piece designed to soften me up before the lawsuit began. And it worked. Not in court, but in my head. I went home that day, sat on my living room floor, and stared at the unopened boxes of unsent inventory stacked by the wall. For the first time in years, I didn't want to work. I didn't want to fight. I just sat there, in silence, feeling like I'd lost something I couldn't name. Over the next month, everything stalled. My business accounts remained partially frozen. I moved some operations to a backup account, but the damage was done. My cash flow took a hit, my ad budget dried up, and my fulfillment timelines got slower. Customers noticed. Some backed out. One of my best-selling suppliers dropped me, claiming reputational risk. I tried to explain, tried to fight through it, but the more I pushed, the more I felt like I was drowning in mud someone else had poured over me. I was losing my footing, not just financially, but mentally. And then came the worst blow. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got the call. My landlord for the warehouse space I rented, barely 800 square feet, but it had become the beating heart of my operation, told me he wasn't renewing my lease. Too much legal noise, he said. I've got other tenants. I can't afford drama. I begged. I offered to pay 3 months ahead. He didn't budge. I hung up and stared at the wall. That was the moment. Rock bottom. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just quiet. Cold. Like something inside me finally broke loose and drifted away. I'd spent 3 years building something that worked, something honest, something mine. And in less than 2 months, the people who raised me had almost destroyed it. I could have folded. I thought about it. I even started drafting a letter to the court agreeing to settle. Something low, just enough to make them go away. But I didn't send it. Because that night, I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in over a decade. Her name was Elise. She used to be my neighbor when we were kids. We'd played backyard tag, ridden bikes through the cul-de-sac. We lost touch after she moved away in middle school. I hadn't thought of her in years. But there she was, messaging me through LinkedIn of all places. Hey Carl, she wrote. I saw your name in a mutual post and did a double take. I remembered you from back home. I was sorry to hear about the lawsuit. Just wanted to say, don't let them take what you've built. You were always the smart one, the quiet one. But we all knew. I read that message over and over. Not because it fixed anything, but because it reminded me who I used to be. The kid who stayed up late watching YouTube videos on coding, who once sold homemade candles door to door for fun. The kid who made things, even when no one paid attention. And suddenly, I realized something. They couldn't take that from me. They could freeze accounts, spread lies, file lawsuits, but they couldn't touch the part of me that knew how to build. So that night, I got up. I went into the storage room, cleared off my whiteboard, and started again from scratch. Rebuild, rebrand, restart. I started small. I had a few $100s in liquid cash, barely enough for a single Facebook ad run. So instead, I went organic. Reddit, Instagram Reels, TikTok snippets. I rebranded my best-selling product under a different name, with a cleaner aesthetic and a more personal voice. I built a new Shopify store using a VPN and a fresh business LLC in another state. I stayed up until 3 a.m. every night. Made calls, wrote copy, learned more about web optimization in 3 weeks than I had in the previous year. And it started to work. Slowly, quietly, but it worked. My DMs filled with customers asking where the old brand went and thanking me when I responded personally. One of them was a YouTuber who ended up featuring the product in a review. That review blew up. Orders tripled in a week. Meanwhile, the lawsuit stalled. My lawyer filed a motion to dismiss. Their team tried to amend it. The judge pushed hearings out another month. Then another. That gave me time. Time to recover. Time to prepare. Because while they were busy spinning fairy tales about how I'd stolen the future Aaron was supposed to have, I was busy collecting receipts. Not just business receipts, Family receipts. The tax records I mentioned? Those weren't easy to get, but they were real. My grandmother, before she passed, had sent me a manila envelope of her own, back when she still lived alone. Inside were copies of the trust she'd set up after Grandpa died. And here's the kicker. Aaron had gotten a payout. A large one. Enough to pay off his college loans, start a business, or buy a house. But he didn't. He blew it. Gambling, bars, trips, crypto scams, all gone within a year. And he knew that. My parents knew that. But they never expected me to find out. I also found an old voicemail from Grandma. She left it a few weeks before she passed. Her voice was frail but clear. I hope you're doing well, Carl. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. I wish the others saw what I see. Keep going. And remember, don't let them guilt you into saving people who never tried to save themselves. I played that message on repeat the night I got it transcribed for evidence. Because now I had motive. Now I had proof. The tides were turning. But I didn't tell anyone. I stayed quiet. Kept building. I moved my entire operation into a friend's garage temporarily. He ran a coffee roasting business and let me use his backroom for shipping. I went invisible for a while. No posts. No updates. Not even to extended family. I let them think I was losing. Let them tell stories about how the truth was catching up to me. And all the while, I was watching. Waiting. Preparing for the next phase. Because soon enough, the court date would arrive. And when it did, I wouldn't just defend myself. I'd dismantle everything they built. Not out of revenge, at least not entirely. But because some people only learn when you stop letting them write your story and hand them a copy of the real one. And trust me, I was writing every word. They didn't know I had the file. That's what made it so satisfying. The documents from Grandma's estate, the ones I found tucked inside that envelope she mailed before she passed, weren't just sentimental relics. They were a blueprint, a timeline, a receipt, the kind of thing my parents assumed would never see daylight. After all, Aaron had torched through that money before the ink on the check had dried. Who would remember? Who would care? Well, me. I scanned everything. Highlighted key figures. The trust fund, the disbursement details, the fact that Aaron had been given a $75,000 payout at age 22 under the condition it be used for long-term growth and development. My name? Nowhere on it. I hadn't received a penny. The best part? Grandma had handwritten a note on the back of the final page. Just 6 words in her cursive scrawl. Carl doesn't need it. He builds. 6 words that destroyed the entire narrative my parents had constructed. 6 words that turned Aaron's sob story into what it really was. An inheritance squandered, not stolen. A future he set on fire. But I didn't go public with it. Not yet. The lawsuit was still crawling forward. My parents' lawyer kept trying to push hearings back, which was fine by me. Every week that passed gave me time to grow stronger, and them more rope to hang themselves with. While they stalled, I started digging. Not just through legal records or bank statements. Through people. See, there's something interesting about small towns. People talk. Especially when you're polite. Especially when you're quiet. I reached out to an old neighbor, Mrs. Delaney, who used to live across from us growing up. She remembered everything. The day Aaron got the check. The brand new car that appeared in our driveway a week later. The parties. The screaming matches between him and my dad when the money ran out. She always said he'd waste it. Mrs. Delaney told me over tea. Your grandma. She wasn't blind, you know. She just didn't want to hurt your mom. I didn't even have to ask for a statement. She offered one. Word got around. Soon, I had a small file of messages, texts, even photos. Aaron in Vegas, champagne in hand. Aaron on a boat, tagged in an old college friend's Instagram post, holding a bottle of Grey Goose and flipping off the camera. The timestamps? All within the 12 months after Grandma's trust was paid out. It painted a picture. A loud, obnoxious, undeniable picture. But that wasn't the only angle I was working. I had one more card to play. One that took some finesse. The first person I called was Mr. Jenkins. He used to be our family accountant, back when my parents still filed their taxes properly. I hadn't seen him in years, but he remembered me instantly. Carl, you were the quiet one, right? The polite one. I need a favor, I said. I wasn't sure he'd agree. But then I told him what was happening, about the lawsuit, the restraining order, the accusations. He got quiet. Real quiet. They told me you stole from them, he said after a beat. Said you were hiding something big. But I didn't buy it. Why not? Because I did their taxes the year they got that trust distribution. Cheryl told me it was going toward Aaron's future. Seed money for a tech company, she said. I filed it under a gift transfer, just like she asked. Would you be willing to put that in writing? I asked. A pause. I'll do better, he said. I've still got the files. He sent them the next morning. Now I had proof from 3 directions: Grandma's trust documents, eyewitness testimony, and tax records showing Aaron received money they never disclosed during discovery. My lawyer nearly fell out of his chair when I handed him the file. They're cooked, Miles said, flipping through the pages. This isn't just a defense anymore. This is counterclaim material. I nodded. That's the plan. But I didn't want to just win. I wanted to change the narrative. So I started laying out something else. Something more public. I rebuilt my brand under a new name, different domain, different visuals, different everything. But this time, I leaned into the story. Not the lawsuit itself, just the broad strokes. Built from scratch, I wrote in the About page. Bootstrapped. No handouts. Every dollar earned the hard way. I never named names. I didn't have to. People knew. Old customers returned. New ones followed. Word spread. Someone started a Reddit thread about the rebrand, and it caught fire. This is how you bounce back, one comment read. This guy's work ethic is unreal. My email list tripled. Revenue rebounded. And I stayed quiet, because I was still waiting for one more thing to fall into place. Aaron's next move. It came sooner than expected. I got a call from Miles one morning while I was packing orders. They filed an emergency motion, he said. For what? To freeze your personal assets. They're claiming you're hiding money. I should have been furious. I should have been panicking. Instead, I smiled. Let them try. See, while they'd been playing checkers, drunk on rage and entitlement, I'd been setting up the chessboard. Everything I owned was now protected under a new LLC. The house, transferred to a trust. The car, leased under the business. Even my savings were split between 2 accounts, both under separate holding companies. Miles laughed when he saw the paperwork. You've been busy. They taught me well, I said. Never trust anyone, not even family. We countered the motion with everything. The tax records, the trust documents, the timeline, Mrs. Delaney's letter, Mr. Jenkins's statement, a full audit trail of my business's growth, from the day I started selling phone accessories out of my dorm room to the day I bought my house. It was surgical and devastating, but still, I wasn't done. Because here's the thing about people like Aaron and my parents. They don't just want money. They want control, the power to shape the story, the ability to say, you owe us, and have everyone believe it. So I planned one final move. Something public, something permanent. I scheduled a podcast interview, just a small one, run by a fellow entrepreneur I'd met years ago. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't viral, but it was honest. For an hour, I told my story. Not the lawsuit, not the revenge, the real story. I talked about growing up in the shadow of someone who could do no wrong, about building a business at night while the rest of my family laughed me off, about paying off student loans with side hustle money, about the power of being underestimated. Sometimes, I said, the hardest part isn't starting from nothing. It's starting from behind, when the people who should have supported you were the ones holding you back. The episode aired a week later. The response was overwhelming. DMs, emails, comments from strangers saying they saw themselves in my words. People who'd been cut down by their own families. People who'd had to fight for every inch. But more than that, people started asking questions. Questions about the lawsuit. Questions my parents weren't ready to answer. Their lawyer called Miles in a panic. We'd like to revisit settlement discussions, he said. We're not interested, Miles replied. Because now it was too late. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was setting the terms. The next hearing was coming fast. And I was ready. Not just with evidence. Not just with allies. But with the unshakable truth that no matter how many times they tried to rewrite my story, I still held the pen. And soon, I'd use it. To end theirs. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. Not physically, no. It was that sterile, stiff kind of cold. The one you feel in your spine when you know something irreversible is about to happen. The walls were beige, the lighting fluorescent. Nothing dramatic. No pounding music. Just the hum of tension as everyone took their place. It had been 9 months since they first filed the lawsuit. 9 months since my parents and my golden child brother Aaron decided I owed them the life he had squandered. 9 months of venomous texts, weaponized family gossip, and pathetic attempts to destroy everything I'd built. on my own, since I was 18. And now it was time. Their side looked rattled. Aaron sat next to their attorney in a wrinkled suit he didn't know how to wear, chewing the inside of his cheek like he was trying to disappear into his seat. My parents were behind him, both dressed like they were attending a church fundraiser, mom in pearls and pastel, dad stiff in a blazer that didn't quite fit around his stomach anymore. They refused to look at me. I was calm. Not because I wasn't nervous. I was. But it was a strange, quiet calm. The kind you only get when you've spent months preparing for a moment with such surgical precision. There's nothing left to panic about. Everything had already been set in motion. My lawyer, Miles, shuffled papers beside me. He leaned over and whispered, "This is going to be fun." The judge, a stern woman in her early 60s, called everyone to order. The hearing began with their lawyer laying out the same tired argument, that I had unfairly benefited from family resources, that I'd misled my parents into believing I was self-made, that Aaron's life had been derailed because I hoarded financial assets that rightfully should have been shared. The words sounded so desperate, so hollow. And then it was our turn. Miles stood. No theatrics. No shouting. Just facts. "Your Honor," he began, "we'll be demonstrating 3 things. First, that my client, Carl, received no financial support or inheritance from his family. Second, that the plaintiff's son, Aaron, received a $75,000 disbursement from a family trust, which he irresponsibly spent. And third, that this lawsuit is a malicious attempt to extract funds from my client under false pretenses after the plaintiffs failed to control their own finances or their son." Then he dropped the folder. Hard. Exhibit A, the trust documents from Grandma, clearly stating that the money was for Aaron and only Aaron. My name was never mentioned. Exhibit B, the notarized letter from Mr. Jenkins, their former accountant, confirming he filed that gift as a trust distribution with explicit instructions from my mother. Exhibit C, a timeline of Aaron's social media posts, travel logs, and online purchases, everything from designer sneakers to bottle service in Miami, lining up perfectly with the 12 months following the trust payout. Exhibit D, a recorded voicemail from Grandma herself, authenticated and transcribed, in which she said, in no uncertain terms, "Carl doesn't need it. He builds." The courtroom went still. My parents' lawyer tried to object. The judge overruled. The facts stood. Then came the final blow. Miles pulled out the spreadsheet. "Your Honor, we've also prepared a breakdown of my client's business growth over the past 4 years. All of it is verifiable, from his dorm room operation, to the first product launch, to the Shopify sales records. Every dollar, every invoice, every tax return. There's no missing money. No hidden assets. Just a young man who worked hard and succeeded without help." He paused. "Meanwhile, we have evidence that the plaintiffs and their son have consistently misrepresented their financial situation to multiple parties, including their mortgage lender and this court." The judge raised an eyebrow, and Miles smiled, "Which is why we're also filing a counterclaim for defamation, malicious prosecution, and emotional distress." I'll never forget what happened next. The judge leaned back in her chair, took off her glasses, and looked directly at my parents. "I've presided over a lot of family cases," she said, voice calm but cold. "But this is one of the more cynical attempts I've seen to weaponize the legal system against a relative for personal gain. Based on the evidence presented, I'm dismissing all claims against Mr. Davis with prejudice." Boom. Done. But she wasn't finished. "As for the counterclaim," she continued, "Mr. Davis is within his rights to pursue damages. And frankly, I believe he has a case." Their lawyer's face went pale. Aaron just sat there, frozen, like a deer in headlights. My mom blinked rapidly, her hands fidgeting with her wedding ring. My dad's face flushed red with something between rage and humiliation. But none of them said a word. Not one. We walked out in silence. Once we were in the hallway, Miles turned to me. "They'll settle. Trust me. They can't afford not to." And they did. 2 weeks later, their lawyer reached out with an offer. They'd cover all my legal fees, issue a written apology drafted by us, and drop any rights to future legal action if I dropped the counterclaim. I didn't agree. Not yet. Because there was one more thing I needed. Truth. I had the apology published, not buried in a private letter or hidden behind legal jargon. I made sure it went public, as a formal statement on my business website, shared in an open letter on LinkedIn, and even featured in the same small podcast that had sparked the first wave of support. The truth had to be visible, not for revenge. For record, I didn't want money from them. I wanted accountability. The day the statement went live, I received over 200 emails. Strangers, friends, former classmates, even a few old teachers, all saying the same thing. Thank you for telling the truth. As for Aaron, he disappeared from social media. Word spread that he'd left town, maybe moved in with a cousin 2 states over. His name became something whispered in our hometown, not spoken with admiration, but with embarrassment. And my parents? They lost most of their inner circle. People they used to gossip with now crossed the street to avoid them. Mrs. Delaney said they stopped showing up to church altogether. No more neighborhood BBQs. No more pretending. They didn't just lose the case. They lost the story. Because I reclaimed it. In the months that followed, my business doubled in size. I expanded to 2 new product lines, hired a small team, and launched a mentorship program for underprivileged students trying to start their own ventures. I called it the Builder's Fund. I knew Grandma would have liked that. One day, maybe I'll forgive them. But not yet. Because forgiveness is earned. And they never even tried. They thought they could take what I built. They didn't realize. I am what I built.